in preparing and responding to bids. So in terms of percentage of projects that have lower than 3 bids, this is actually not good, 51%. I think the reason is that for some of the agencies, they are doing extremely well, and then for others, they are not doing as well. That's why you see this average. Otherwise, having an average, a good one of 7.3, and then this one of 51%, it means that some of the agencies studied were not. Now, looking at who, the origin of companies taking these contracts or projects, we found that 99% of the contracts were awarded to local companies. This is good. We are not looking at value. We are looking at the number. This one is looking at the number, not value. You look at the value, the situation will change. Projects linked with procurement plans. I think, Commissioner, I remember that the first report AFIC issued on this one, for every 5 contracts, 4 were not in procurement plans. But you see here, there is very good progress that all the contracts which were analyzed were reflected in procurement plans. So diversion was not there. On delays, 25% of the projects had been delayed by between 3 to 6 months. I think when you look at it without the context, it looks small. But if you put context of the financial year, it becomes significant, isn't it? The financial year is 12 months. So if you say there are delays by 6 months, then it has significant implications. There is a slide that is missing, I think, that I wanted. Okay, in terms of recommendations, would like to recommend the following. What I wanted to see, I think, Michael, that slide is missing. One of the key things that we find and would like to draw your attention on to is that disclosure of planning information is reasonably okay, but then as you go towards as you progress during the process, it becomes very low. So without that data being disclosed, it becomes a challenge for stakeholders to engage. I don't know what happened to that slide. Can you help me to? Okay. Oh, yes, it's here. So you can see here on planning information, the situation looks reasonable. Like you see, UNRWA, 272 projects disclosed. You have Ministry of Education and Sports 17, 87 by Arua District Local Government. Like that looks fairly reasonable. Now when you go to awarded, you can see what happens. How much is disclosed. Arua, which had 270 something, only 5. Mbarara, only 1. UNRWA, which had 270 something, only 98. Now when you go to completed, only Ministry of Health discloses something, only one of these projects. This is an area that we would like to draw the attention of stakeholders to improve disclosure across the whole cycle of a project. The idea is that people need to know everything all the time. So we recommend the following, and I'm very glad to have our very good friend and partner Benson here, the ED of PPDA. We welcome the initiative of government to introduce the EGP, the e-government procurement system, which is going to improve a lot on the areas that we have touched on. Our request is that disclosure should be, that this system should be aligned to the Open Contracting Data Standard and the Open Contracting for Infrastructure Data Standard. These two global standards that I talked about, once publication is aligned to this, it will help us a lot to use this data and be able to give government meaningful feedback on the various indicators, whether it is competition, whether it is disclosure, whether it is efficiency. On all performance areas, we commit to be able to give this useful feedback. We also recommend for PPDA to develop and implement a data management policy and system. In fact, if it were possible to have a portal that looks at the infrastructure data standards, publishes infrastructure projects according to these standards, it will be good. What we have now is one which looks at all procurements. And when you're looking at everything, sometimes you lose out on something. We also recommend for PPDA to take measures to address the delays because, like I said, there are two levels of delays. One is the efficiency of the system, the number of days the tendering process takes. We found that was there were significant delays that need attention. And then also we looked at project delays, that is after the award, of between 3 and 6 months, which also need attention, whether it is issues of capacity, whether it is issues of supervision, they need to be looked at. And in fact, in another study we did in the assurance process, we found that many times contractors would take so long after signing the contract to be on site, even when contracts were saying they should be on site by this date. So we make a recommendation there that the role of PPDA in the planning of procurement should be reviewed and strengthened to include the assessment of the adequacy of budget to meet planned activities. If the issue of delays is attributed to resourcing, I think the role of PPD and other stakeholders needs to be augmented. And then the private sector should take steps to ensure that project cost estimates they submit are feasible, because some of the delays arise from negotiating variations. So we recommend that measures should be made along those lines. And then also that government should reinforce the project management units in ministries, departments, and agencies to develop project costs and ensure that executive approval is done before implementation. Also, PPDA should work towards reducing procurement transaction costs to boost private sector participation. I think also the private sector had another concern. They are here, they are going to talk about it, I think. Then PPDA should initiate sector-wide dissemination of project information, implementation status, expected outputs, and funding. So this relates to the issue that the slides I talked about, where there is good performance on disclosing planning information. But then, as you proceed into execution and award, disclosure becomes very weak. So we recommend that PPDA should take interest in that, in engaging respective PDEs to take appropriate action. Good enough, that is what the law requires, so I think it is more of enforcement. And PPDA should strengthen also the issue of local content monitoring. I think that is the point I wanted to highlight. I had our stakeholders bring this issue to Parliament when we met members of Parliament. I think the area of monitoring needs attention. If I say that what we had from the Physical Infrastructure Committee of Parliament, they said that interpretation of this 30% was that it should be across the board, not these small things that foreign contractors give local companies. So we make a recommendation there that Cost Uganda MSG should commission a study to identify factors that prevent the private sector from participating fully, as they should, in public procurements, including the area of SMEs, but also inclusion, youth, women, and other stakeholder groups. That costs should undertake independent quality verification of procurement of infrastructure projects by 3 local governments of Masindi, Guru, and Kabare. And finally, that costs should involve and train PDUs on there's a challenge. We don't know if that is the case. Because PPD has developed a platform, it is there. But agencies are not publishing data there. So we are guessing that if the reason is capacity, maybe we can work with PPDA to offer that capacity in training, and also maybe for some of the cases, deploy some interns to help these agencies to upload this data, because everything starts with disclosure. So we make that recommendation, and costs should, MSD should engage PPDA to see if there's something that could be done to bridge the capacity gap, if the issue is capacity. Then we recommend, I think I've already talked about this, number 14, that PPDA should adopt infrastructure data standard and open contracting for infrastructure data standard to disclose project information. I think, Director, you made during the East Africa Procurement Forum, this is one of the resolutions which was agreed. So I think maybe it is a matter of implementation, since the commitment was made by the government at that level. That the government, through the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and PPDA, should engage and train procurement and disposal units on knowledge, skills, data capture, tools such as computers, software, applications, and the rest. Again, if the issue is capacity, because capacity can be on tools, can be on equipment, and knowledge. And especially for, you see, this analysis captured a lot of information from local governments. So the issue of capacity could be significant there. Cost MSG should engage the Chamber of Commerce and Private Sector Foundation to assess the capacity of local contractors and opportunities for joint efforts to bridge this capacity. And then PPDA should commission a study to identify factors that inhibit private sector participation in infrastructure projects in particular. And then government should improve and implement initial 10-year national provider development program to improve national performance. I think on this one, I think the answers could be there already. On the factors inhibiting participation, local participation, or even foreign, building trust is very important. Disclosure, everything to be done in the open. It gives confidence. And in fact, we had, there's a time we were doing some scoping study. We went, one of the agencies we met was the Ministry of Works. The head of procurement at that time said that when she was appointed, they would struggle to get minimum number of bids. Then she said that they started a campaign to publish, even call people prospective bidders, even when they have no business opportunities, to explain how the system works, how everyone has an equal chance, where to find information for business opportunities. And she said, I don't know if engineer that tent is still there, but she showed me at that time that this tent here is for bid opening, that when we open now, people cannot fit in the boardroom. So I think that's what needs to be done, in my view, to build trust and encourage local participation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gilbert. And again, I need to mention, because our audience on television may be wondering why there are a few hand claps. We are a scientific audience. I need to remind them. They might be wondering what really happened. We have another presentation very shortly, which is really part of the other speakers who will be coming forward to speak to us. But that said, I want to also recognize the presence of the ED of PPDA who is here. He has also one of his board members here, and so it's only right that I introduce Mr. Levi Kawagambe, who is also here with us. And so PPDA is fully represented. Thank you so much for joining us. Bwana ED, I'm not so sure if you, as they load your presentation, I wanted to invite you, but immediately after yourself, we will be getting comments on this presentation from our other stakeholders, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Works, State House, under the Infrastructure Monitoring Unit. We have our procurement and contractor and consultant feedback experts here who will be sharing their comments also, and contribution from one of our own in the journalism fraternity, Andrew, who is also already here. So please welcome Executive Director, PPDA, Benson. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Maurice. Is there someone navigating this? Oh, I navigate it myself. Good afternoon, members. I can see you can't speak because your lips and mouth are tied. But I want to, first of all, appreciate this audience. My name is Benson Turamye. I've been at PPDA since 2004, but I've been an executive director of PPDA since June 2019. So 1 year, actually, I'm marking my anniversary this month. So I want to appreciate Cost Uganda for this conversation and also the coverage by UBC, because as much as we are in a scientific conference, I believe globally and nationally we are being viewed. And I want to call upon those viewers to keep tuned to UBC, because what we are going to share is important in terms of fair business practices between government and the private sector. I am going to take you through a few things in terms of this presentation. Let's understand government role in public procurement. Since I'm representing government on public procurement, I will restrict myself in that area and see how fair business practices can be attained through that vehicle of public procurement. We will briefly define the fair business practices and also pass through the factors affecting the participation of bidders and what efforts we have made as PPDA, and also agree on way forward. I want to appreciate Gilbert for the recommendations from the study, and also indicate that most of those recommendations are under implementation, but also indicate that where those that we haven't implemented, discussions should continue, so that we get a clear working way forward on those. Let me first take our audience on the role of government in public procurement and PPDA. The PPDA Act of 2003 decentralized public procurement. And what does this mean? It means that MDAs, or procuring and disposing entities, which are central government, statutory bodies, local governments we are talking about municipalities and districts, handle procurement processes, right from planning, invitation to bid, receiving bids, evaluating bids, contracting, and contract management. So, government entities, this process was decentralized to them. And I want to clear that at times misconception that PPDA handles public procurement. No, procurements are decentralized. So Ministry of Education, Masindi District Local Government, Uganda National Road Authority, Civil Aviation Authority, Jinja Referral Hospital, Makerere University, all those public institutions, procurement is handled there, right from planning, budgeting, up to even paying the contractors. Then what is the role of PPDA? Having also in mind that government spends over 60% of the budget annually through public procurement. PPDA, as the authority, was established also by the same Act of Parliament of 2003 to provide oversight function in terms of application of fair, competitive, transparent, and non-discrimination, and ensuring value for money. So we ensure that these processes meet this basic principle, but also to harmonize procurement and disposal policies. Local government procurement policy or procedures with central government, with donor fund, there should be that harmony. But also set standards in terms of issuing standard bidding documents, issuing guidelines, and also working on regulations. But also monitor compliance, including procurement audits for these entities, and capacity building for all the stakeholders that are involved in public procurement. Gilbert talked about transparency and disclosure. At PPDA, we developed a government procurement portal where entities post this data. And that data includes procurement plans. They include the bid opportunities. It includes the awarded contracts. And this will be improved when we go to mission soon. Actually, next month, we are going to start implementing electronic government procurement system. Fair business, as defined, refers to the conduct of business fairly and sincerely, adhering to the ethical principles and refraining from unfair trade practices and any form of bribery or corruption, to contribute to sound social and economic development through fair competition. And this is where we stand as PPDA. But what other factors affecting the participation of the private sector? That figure should be changed. It is a typo. 1.8 should be 3.8. I think Gilbert read 7.3 in the infrastructure. 3.8 is overall bidder participation. If we call for a bid opportunity, the response is at 3.8%. So you get 3 people participating. But essentially, the data also we have show that the high cost of bidding and in the form of bid securities, advance payment securities, and performance securities, which are obtained, which are required to safeguard the risk that may be put on the side of government. These documents are required. But on the side of the bidders, it becomes a cost. The other issue is failure in meeting bid requirements at different stages of evaluation. Eligibility, are you a registered firm? Yes or no? Some firms put in their bid when they are not registered. Are you tax compliant? Yes or no? If you are not tax compliant, then you can't pass. So eligibility, you need to pass that part. Administrative, they have requested for a bid security expiring on this date. Have you put it? If you have not put it, then you can't also pass that stage. But more important, and where we have had, I say, Madam Muhebwa from INABSEC had serious discussions, is on the technical requirements, experience, equipment, staff competencies, and turnover. You have a bid of 100 billion, you're asking a turnover of maybe 500 billion. So what is the guiding principle of the previous experience in terms of complexity of the current procurement? What about the turnover? What about the staffing? Why do you may not need this particular engineer for this particular work, but you are asking kulemesa. So this is, and I will give a way forward on some of these things, what we are planning to do. The other, of course, issue that you should know, especially those from the private sector, is lack of capacity in preparing responsive bids. A bid response is like an exam. If they say, how old are you? Don't say, I was born in 1963. No. How old are you? Say your age. But now you are now saying, I was born this. Then you need this person to start calculating your age. Just answer the question as put. And we found also this lacking in our private sector. Of course, there is also this issue of delayed payments, which has discouraged bidders from. There are bidders who come to me and say, no, we'll never, because we have run bankrupt, we'll never do business again with government because of delayed payments. Then, of course, there is perception also of corruption in public procurement. This perception, we as officials of government need to remove it from the minds of the stakeholders, because we need you as stakeholders. Government, if the private sector, no, we will no longer participate, then the government will never achieve the services that they are delivering to the citizens. The other challenging factor is lack of affordable financing, and our private sector end up inexpensive money lenders. Those they call kagwirao, and their interest is so high, they will tell you 10%, even 20% per month. And I don't know how much profit you are going to get from that particular contract. In terms of promotion of fair business practice by PPDA, these are our achievements. I want to register in this conference, and the viewers of this program, that we have issued standard bidding documents. You know, he didn't warn me on time, now he's warning me to stop. Reservation schemes, and this is very important to private sector, reservation schemes, and this is within our mandate. Issuing guidelines on reservation. What can we reserve to our local providers? And what we have done is reservation in terms of threshold, reservation for roads, 45 billion. Competition is only for locals. For other works, 10 billion and below. We have also mandatory subcontracting of 30%. That 30%, if a foreign firm gets this, then 30% must be for locals, subcontracted. But also, you have a preference as local contractors on works for 7%, for consultancies of 15%, for joint ventures of 4%. What that means, government can afford to pay more to a local provider by these margins. So at evaluation, if you reach evaluation, you take this advantage. We are introducing e-government procurement, which will help reduce on transaction cost, transparency, competition, and the rest. Then the other issue is bid securing declaration to reduce on cost, because this one you just declare that if I don't comply, PPDA should blacklist me. So you don't need to go to the bank, but this apply only for quotations and restricted bidding. Amendment of the PPD Act will address issues of delays. What is the way forward? We are going to amend the reservation guidelines. That discussion is ongoing, and when we call upon you, or even from here, you can give us your submission. But we have lined up people the stakeholders to interact with for that amendment. But also, after the act has been the bill has been accepted to by the president, we want to have that reservation guideline turned into a regulation. Amendment of the standard building document to include notes, what you guiding notes on those prohibiting requirements. How do you calculate turnover? How do you calculate experience? What do you need? How do you facilitate the competition? Continued capacity building. We want also to call upon you to have joint ventures as participants, form associations, to have a common voice, lobby for contractors, fund that is affordable. Maybe finance will talk about it. But you need to do that. Really strongly. You say the Chinese are given equipment, are given A, B, C, D, you can't compete with them. But all of these projects, you can compete. They are open, even outside the reservation. So if you have the competitive, if you boost your competitive nature, then you can compete for everything. We are collaborating with non-state actors in contract monitoring. Gilbert is one of them. But also the law gives us more powers to punish errant public officers that breach the procurement laws and cause financial loss. Punish contractors that flout the contracts, those contractors who do shoddy work, abandon sites, and breach the ethical code of conduct. We have the powers to deal with them. I thank you, and Maurice, I end there. I hope I have met your expectation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edie. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I forgot to brief you briefly before you came to speak. Our time is limited because TV time is very expensive, Edie. So the other speakers, the ED has eaten 1 minute from each of your presentations. So I am requesting we stick to the time we have. So we'll quickly move to the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. I would like to invite Commissioner David Chienji to come and make his remarks. If you could do it, and I'm told the ministry has decided this year you're going to be frugal. You need also be frugal with your time. So 4 minutes, sir.
Thank you, moderator. The names are David Chienji from Ministry of Finance. I think you'll allow me to remove this mask since I'm adhering to the social distance. Colleagues in this room, I want to first of all start by thanking Cost Uganda, the participants here, viewers, wherever you are, for organizing such an event. I think 4 minutes are more than enough for me. I'm not going to make a purpose presentation because my colleague from PPD has said it all. But I'll just supplement what he has mentioned, just to make a supplement. First of all, government of Uganda has really, we are so lucky that this government listens to the public. We always ask, I think you've seen it from the budget, how we make the budget itself. We involve the CSOs. Even in procurement, we involve all stakeholders whenever we want to make sure that we offer better services to this country, in this country. So far, a number of reforms are being undertaken in Ministry of Finance. I will not mention what so far it has mentioned because, as you're aware, procurement is a function under Ministry of Finance. So all the things that he has mentioned, amendments, the minister is responsible for all those amendments. But there are also other reforms that we are undertaking to make sure that we promote fair business practices. And among them, maybe what Nema mentioned, we've done, you're all aware that we have a system, the information, the IFMI system, which is responsible for streamlining accounting process. And more specifically, here I can mention the issue of payment. Incidentally, we are also tackling the issue of people who are mismanaging that system. Because ideally, the moment you get a purchase, an electronic purchase order, that should be money. And that's why this financial, the Secretary of Treasury issued an instruction that accounting officers should stop cancelling purchase orders. In fact, now they should get permission. That's why one of the reasons why suppliers, providers have been crying for non-payment. The moment you have an procurement order, that's money. But some people have mismanaging this process, and we are open, requesting you to come, contact us, contact the Secretary of Treasury, the Accountant General's office. We shall deal with these people. Another reform that government has taken on is introducing e-purchase orders. Right now, we have been piloting e-purchase orders. What is the purpose of e-purchase order? The moment the purchase order has been signed, has been approved on the IFMI system, there will be an automatic notification to the provider. So you don't have to come and line up in a PDU or accounting officer begging for a purchase order. What is my purchase order? No, you have information that the contract has been awarded to you. All you need to do is to accept and take a confirmation that I will deliver. So this business of saying that purchase orders, you have to go and look to beg somebody to get you the paper is no more. These are some of the reforms that government is introducing. The policy that we came up with, the government of Uganda has come up with a procurement policy. This procurement policy now guides how we're going to do procurement. The implementation will take time, but there are many good proposals, intents that government has come up with. The issue of sustainability is being introduced in our procurement system. Sustainability, by the way, looks at three elements: the issue of economic, social, and environment. So the issue of the local content you're talking about, the reservation schemes, are under the economic and social aspects. So government is really determined to make sure that they listen to you, they make changes. They, in order to make sure that some of these legal framework, some of these documents, instruments we are using are more can bind. That's why now the Minister of Finance, having got clearance from the cabinet, are even considering to converting guidelines, some of the guidelines, into regulations. Because as you know, implementing guidelines has a guidelines less weaker than a regulation. So now, like the reservation guideline, the cabinet has given instruction that it has to be converted into regulations so that they bite more. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are many more, but because of time, let me stop there. I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. You almost went over your 4 minutes, but I really want to thank you for staying within the time. So may I now have the pleasure of inviting Engineer Samson Bagonza, who's the Engineer-in-Chief at the Ministry of Works, for their input as the ministry.
Thank you, Moderator. The leadership of Cost Uganda, the ED, PPDA, all senior government officials here, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Engineer Samson Bagonza. I've been introduced. I'm the Engineer-in-Chief of the Ministry of Works and Transport. It's the job I've done for the last 17 years. Now, I will first make general comments on the presentation. Now, the first general comment, these are comments of policy nature. I want to observe that from the works and transport sector, we have been having 4 major problems with our providers, but I can see now we have a new problem of the need to improve business practices. The problems we have been having is access to work, access to equipment, access to affordable credit, and delayed payments, as has been said. Now, I want to commend PPDA for the guideline you gave us on reservation. I want to confirm that actually that guideline has resolved a very big problem, which we should thank PPDA and government for. Now, the other problems are also equally being attended to, and they will be resolved. So I can confirm here that there is actually steady progress on these matters. Now, what we need is effective monitoring or compliance audits on how we are actually implementing the reservation guidelines and the preferential schemes that were issued. For us within the sector of works and transport, it has been agreed that the ministry should internally within the sector monitor our agencies and see to what extent are you implementing. That is, how much work are you reserving for the local providers and the the resident providers. We have done a recent report early this year, and we have the results, and we made recommendations, but we would like PPDA to come and also do a compliance audit or compliance monitoring exercise so that we reinforce what we are doing. The second point I want to raise of policy nature is that we have now a Roads Act that regulates the construction of bridges and roads. This act became operational in September last year, and one thing that I would want to observe here is that it has criminalized shoulder work. If you do shoulder work and you are a contractor, apart from the contractual management procedures that we have to penalize you, you can also be taken to court, and it attracts a fine of up to 40 trillion, 2 million currency points. So in addition to what PPDA can do, we can also handle you through the Roads Act. So as we talk about fair business practices, we should know that once we give you works, the works must be delivered up to the standard. Otherwise, you have a problem. Point number 3 of policy nature is that in 2015, we had a project called Crossroads, and I'm sure you have heard of this. And it dealt with this subject. The study Crossroads that did was entitled Support Improvement to Private Sector Confidence in Planning, in Procurement, and Contract Management Processes. And it is the same subject of fair business practices. So this report has so many findings and recommendations. The unfortunate bit was that it was prepared at the time the project was winding up. So when I saw my invitation to this workshop or to this meeting, I felt that we should, as a ministry, disseminate this report, share it with PPDA, share it with Cost, and some of the stakeholders in this workshop. So we shall actually disseminate that report so that you can see that there was even a recommendation that when you have a high value bid being evaluated, you should have the independent parallel evaluation system, such that you have an evaluation team within the entity evaluating, but then another team independently selected to make sure that they too can get the same result. And that is very, very important. Now, my specific comments, Mr. Moderator, is one. On the paper, the presenter kept on saying disclosure. Disclosure of data, of information. I'm not quite clear where we disclose this data and when and where it should be. Let us be very clear so that we tell our people and we are up to date with this. But there's nothing we are hiding, but let us be guided where the data should be, when, and in what form. Number 2, on the specific comments, is the cost overruns. Now, until you read the bigger document, if you came to the PowerPoint, you may say, but where are they cost overruns? Now, I want to explain, and maybe PPDA might help us with this, that for the works contracts that we sign in this country, the majority are what we call ad-measurement contracts. Now, ad-measurement contracts mean that the bills of quantities, which have quantities and rates and amounts, come up with a contract price that is not final from the beginning. From day one, even from the day you sign, that is not the final figure you will end up with. And is a principle enshrined in the contract. They are called ad-measurement contract. In that, the quantities of work detailed in the contract are estimates. What you pay the contractor is the actual measured work that he or she has done. So, by having that contract, you will never have the same figure, the actual price that you pay, compared to what you signed. Now, we normally put in safeguards that there is a contingency sum of about 5% to shock absorb. But this is where the variations come from. You might add in more work. The measurements might be more or less of the actual work done. It provides for claims. The contractor is compensated for certain events which are detailed within the contract. And some of the compensations attract time. Some attract both time and cost. Then there is also a provision that once a contract is more than 18 months in terms of duration or contract period, then you apply what they call a price adjustment. Now, price adjustment is comparing what the prices you had for the major inputs at the beginning of the contract and what they are at whatever stage you are in the contract. So there is a way you adjust for the pricing of the major inputs. So what I'm trying to observe here is that cost overruns is inherently applied in the contracts we have. Now, PPDA can come up with other regulations, and maybe we go to another kind of contract to resolve that matter. The other point I have is on time overruns and project delays. Now, in project delays, the presenter, I hope maybe it is in the detailed report, but the issue of administrative reviews and whistleblowers' complaints. We have projects in the sector which have been delayed for more than a year. You resolve an administrative review procedure, at concluding it, another one comes. Then when that one gets concluded, there is a whistleblower. Now, for how long would you go with this? So it's a very, very big problem. And I think we need a guideline, a strengthened guideline on administrative reviews and whistleblowers. Unfortunately, if it is a project funded by a financing institution, a foreign financing institution, the whistleblowers' complaints are entertained at whatever stage. Now, that can be a problem. Now, the other time overruns, as you know, some of them result from inclement weather, force majeure, like this COVID. You can see now COVID with your masks. Compensation. And then weaknesses within the performance of the contractor. That one is also there. Now, the final point I have on the presentation, which is specific, is on your recommendations number 12 and 13. I don't know how you singled out those districts where you want to do quality verification. But number 13, according to the PPDA, if you are to do that training, you would have to do it alongside with PPDA. You ride on the statutory functions of PPDA to bring in the aspects of cost on the training you want to do for the PDEs. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, engineer. And we have known engineers to be very concise. So thank you, engineer in chief. Another engineer is coming next, is also a presidential advisor, and is heading the infrastructure monitoring unit at State House. So please, engineer Dr. Patrick Rusongoza, you're welcome. You have 4 minutes. I would have made it 3.5 because the engineer Samson took some of the time from the other presenters.
Thank you very much, moderator. I don't need to introduce myself. To save time, I've already been introduced. So the team leader of Cost, engineer in chief, all heads of government, MDAs present, fellow participants, I would like to thank Cost for inviting us for this very important high-level meeting to discuss issues concerning our infrastructure in Uganda. I'll go direct to comment on the presentation by Cost, and I just have 4 comments. Cost indicated to us that they found that 99% of the contracts they sampled were implemented by our local providers. Well, but they went ahead to put a disclaimer that when it comes to the value of these contracts, it's rather different. I wish they had told us what it is as well, because that's what really matters. Not the numbers, but how much our contractors able to undertake on what we provide every year. The other comment is Cost indicated that 86% of the contracts that were sampled were completed within the contract amounts. Completed within the contract amounts. But it might be important to look further. How were these contract amounts arrived at through the stages of planning? How do they compare with the engineer's estimate? How do they compare with what was provided for on Form 5 and what was eventually awarded? It can be an interesting data to look at for the future. On project disclosure, I just picked out one example of UNRWA, which you indicated as among the best performing. 98 projects disclosed out of 272. What can PPDA do to promote this area of disclosure? Because it is very vital to disclose all our projects to our citizens, to promote transparency and accountability. Also in your report, you mentioned that you are going to carry out further studies in Masindi, in the local governments of Masindi, Gulu and Kabale. But you did not indicate which local governments in particular. Are they the district local governments, the municipal local governments, or all? So those are the 4 comments that I have on the presentation. And indeed, on the part of government, all of us here present, we need to embrace compliance. We know that the whole of this process we are trying to look at, the procurement process, the transparency and accountability, all of it sums up to one thing. Do we have value for money in what we undertake? The projects that we are undertaking, do they yield value for money, good value for money, or best value for money? So it is important that we embrace compliance at all stages with the laws and regulations and guidelines that have been provided to us by PPDA. On the part of the private sector, they play a role, as the report indicated. What capacity do they have to bid for these prices, for the projects? And how do they react when they lose the tenders? Do they accept defeat, or they want to go for continuous administrative reviews? So the private sector also has to look at that area, and as well as because Cost looks at government private sector and the civil society and citizens. So on the side of the civil society and the citizens, how do they participate in this project delivery, infrastructure project delivery? It's all about disclosure of information. Do they demand for it? And to what extent should they know? So that they can also play their parts in monitoring of these projects as they are delivered. Once again, I thank Cost for inviting us, and I wish that you continue with this momentum and that this process be dynamic, because for us as government and you, all the stakeholders, if we are to stamp out corruption in the infrastructure sector, such forums and all your interventions that you're undertaking as Cost should continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, Engineer. So our next speakers, I've been told will be a little briefer. So I'm hoping Abraham, Elizabeth, and Engineer Betty, you'll all help me cut my time, because I'm bargaining with TV to give me more time now. So we can close with the last closing remarks. So allow me to invite Abraham Nkata on behalf of the procurement team to come. He told me he would do 3 minutes, so I want to thank you, Abraham, in advance.
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon. My name is Abraham Nkata, independent consultant, and also serving my last term in the Procurement Tribunal. I join the earlier speakers to appreciate Cost for organizing this forum and the media for propelling and advocating for good practices. In relation to the presentation, first I must apologize that I walked in a little late because we are in a tribunal session. But I would like to add on the side of the private sector why it might find itself not doing much is unethical practices. For example, fronting CVs for key personnel, and then you don't have consent from the owners, and consequently they back out of your project, and you end up underperforming because you have substituted the personnel from the good quality whom you used in the CV presentation and substituted with an underqualified. We should also look into our sites as contractors and promote ethical practices. The other thing maybe PPDA may help to add into the restrictions. There is emerging the issue of using middlemen or influencers. These definitely increase project costs to the government. So let's also work on that. Gain confidence. You don't need influencers, you don't need middlemen to win contracts. Maybe PPDA should help to include that as a condition, that if the bidder has influencers or middlemen, should declare them, or else if it is found, then there's a high penalty for using middlemen. And the last one I'd like to address in terms of propelling participation, maybe it's an emerging issue as a result of the COVID. Maybe Cost should look into that. Many SMEs who have been supporting infrastructure development operate on loans. And these are, I think the ED talked about that, high cost loans, but now the capacity to finance those loans is going to be a serious challenge. And we'll see many of those that have been coming in closing down and then creating opportunities for foreign providers to again take over contracts. So what am I saying? If we want to see more participation of local providers, government should come in to help in financing, creating a financing platform for our local providers so that they don't get tempted to do fraudulent actions to complete contracts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those were from procurement. And now I want to invite our contractor feedback on the data. Elizabeth Muhewa, please come.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Without taking a lot of time, we've been cautioned on the few minutes we have to have our feedback. I would quickly want to give our remarks as contractors regarding the report. One is on tender management, which in the report is under 4.4. Item 4.4.4, on the percentage of tenders won by the local contractors. It puts us at 99%, which is quite misleading if we are to look at it, if we are to use it to evaluate the implementation of local content. We all noted that the report relies more on proactive data, which clearly shows that all the PDEs that were looked at, they only disclose information they deem fit for the public to know. Our report also does not show clear statistics showing projects done by national contractors, which we term as contractors wholly owned by Ugandans. We are all aware that the guideline PPDA issued in February 2018 introduced a resident provider who is a company that has been incorporated in Uganda and has been operational for 2 years. So at the moment in the report that the report that gave rise to the 99% may not clearly depict who exactly did the work. Are they the real local contractors, or it's a mix? It's resident providers and the domestic contractors. Also, the analysis of 99% of contracts awarded to local contractors did not look at the nature of projects. It was clearly put by the presenter from Cost Uganda that they looked at numbers, not the value. But here we are interested in both. How big was the project we are looking at here? If we can move to the factors that have hindered local participation in procurement at the moment, I'm glad EDPPDA pointed out some of the issues at stake, which actually he went ahead that we are having discussions, and we hope we shall have workable solutions. And one of the issues at the moment that the local construction sector is facing is unrealistic bid qualification requirements set by PDEs. With the threshold set in the guidelines of 2017 and amended in 2018, they clearly indicate that projects below 45 billion of civil works are meant to be done by local contractors, and other works, including buildings worth 10 billion, are also meant for local contractors. We may want to all appreciate that Local providers continue to face a dilemma in complying with the bid qualification requirements that require annual turnover and works of similar nature that is twice or thrice the works being procured. This has been witnessed with all PDEs. We may not say all, but most of them. We've had correspondences with most of them on how the requirements are being set, because it's not very much clear. And we are finding someone who is tendering a contract of, let's say, 15 billion, estimate of 15 billion, he's requiring bidders to have average annual turnover of 45 billion. It's an area that PPDA talked about, that they are trying to work on and guide all PPDA on how to determine fair and affordable requirements for the local contractors. Another issue that the local construction sector is facing is high cost of financing. PPDA still talked about it. We are all aware that the cost of financing in Uganda with our commercial banks is now above 20%, which makes it difficult for most local contractors to compete with the foreign contractors that come with subsidies from their countries of origin. Another issue that is inhibiting the local participation in procurement is lack of comprehensive programs for contractors' development. The programs we mean here are in terms of assessment, training, and mentoring. Despite the government's efforts to grow domestic capacities in the industry, the law remains convenient to large foreign contractors. We quickly move to our proposals if we have seen contractors, local contractors specifically, take part in procurement, in public procurement. One of the solutions for high cost of financing is the government looking into establishing a construction development fund at UDB that would see contractors get access to fair financing at not more than 5%. We are usually comparing local contractors with the foreign contractors that they are coming in with money at 2% from their countries. So we believe if the government to put up the fund for our local contractors and the charge is not going above 5%, we are sure their capacities are going to be boosted. Our other proposal is that PPDA should issue guidelines to all PDEs on fair determination of bid qualification requirements, specifically of annual turnover and works of similar nature. Our proposal here was that it should be half or not go above the value of the work you're trying to procure. We are arranging to have a technical team meet a team from PPDA and have a discussion on that matter and see if they can buy our position on that. PPDA should also come out and have a clear definition of a local contractor. We talked of the regulations which are coming up and discussions are on, where UNAPSEC is taking part, and we are glad to note that there is a proposal of the definition of a resident provider to have been a company that has operated in Uganda for the past 10 years, contrary to the guideline that we've always had of 2 years. So if we had that guideline passed, we believe it will be a benefit to the local indigenous contractors. Our final prayer to the government is to have specific national provider development plan to improve the national provider performance in the identified development areas. We have a proposal that we've suggested to the Ministry of Works, PPDA in copy. of having a 10-year strategic program, a road development program, where we can have local contractors engaged for, say, 10 kilometers. Once a contractor has successfully delivered on 10 kilometers, that contractor is upgraded. If we get someone failing, then that person is taken back. It's an initiative that we believe will develop the capacities of local contractors. With the increased domestic participation in public procurement, and in particular construction industry, we believe this will go a long way in ensuring potential turnaround of Uganda's economy. We consider that this is not a focus against foreign providers, but we believe that it should seriously be considered as truly rewarding economic measure meant to help develop the local economy through employment creation and foreign exchange retention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need to announce that our TV time is fast spent. And so the audiences on TV, you will notice that we'll gradually migrate from the Protea Hotel and run to Parliament so we can show Ugandans what Parliament is discussing. Unfortunately, my colleague, of course, Chamagero, will not be happy that his other journalists will not see him, and Engineer Betty, I apologize for that. But we want to thank you, the audiences, for joining us, and we'll share the full conversation online so you can follow what you have missed. So I want to invite Engineer Betty Nakamia to speak on behalf of the consultants. Betty.
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, everybody. All protocol observed. I'll thank Cost for inviting us here and as consultant to have a say on what has been presented. Much of the issues have been already mentioned by our colleague from the construction sector, and I'm so happy that the engineer-in-chief has already highlighted most of the issues that are really affecting our industry. As consultants, I would just like to add my voice to what engineer-in-chief has already said. And one of the things that are really affecting us is accessibility to work, opportunities to get the jobs to undertake. We've seen in the report that has been presented that much of this has been done by 99.3% done by locals. I'll just also like to highlight, it's not clear which are these entities that participated in this, because it indicates as if the local content is actually over-exceeded by almost 100%. One of the other things which we like to really bring out is the definition of the local company. It's, as the guidelines right now, or the policies that of 2 years. So in other words, an international firm which has practiced here for 2 years is in definition of this. And this will skew every result. But then the nationals, what are their shares? And one of the other things that I would also want to highlight in the report that we have seen is it's not clear what is the portion for the consultants. Everything has been put together. It's not clear. Some of these projects, we don't know whether they were the contractors or the consultants involved in this procurement. Now, I would like also to, the ED of PPDA is here. I would like to understand the policies or what are the government doing in order for us to move from this 30% to having 100%. What are the plans that the government is doing? Because we need to build the capacity so that we start doing this work ourselves. When shall our professionals be continually called support staff? You find a graduate engineer still working as a technician just because those opportunities are not there. Even we welcome the foreign firms, but they should have a mandate to build the capacity. So the capacity, how are we monitoring to see that it's being built in this nation? We've seen even senior engineers failing to work on those projects just because the requirements are high. When will we have that opportunity to meet those requirements if we don't get the opportunity to do that? I really thank the government for the initiatives they have put in place to see the reserve schemes put in place. We can attest to that we've seen some entities now putting this in place. UNRWA in particular, there are some projects they have really earmarked for the nationals, not even just local companies, but the nationals get involved. They are giving this, could be, we were put at a test, but it's only when we are tried, that's when you see whether we have the results or the capacity to do that. Even when we failed, it's in order to build that capacity slowly, gradually, so that at one time we can be proud to say that, yes, this work is now being done by Ugandans. Now, there was a mention of delayed payments. Yes, this is affecting us a lot. And fortunately, in some of even the contracts we have with government, there are no penalties for any delayed payment. So it ties our cash flow. So really working, it makes it difficult even to get into other projects. And then the tax laws, these are affecting us. You'll find that every time you raise an invoice, you have to pay the VAT up front. But you'll find that there are times we've had our consultants delayed payment even for a year. So, and imagine that time you're paying all the taxes. There is also, as consultants, we have the professional indemnities. Of recent, it's becoming too hard in our execution of the projects. It used to be paid at once, but every time now you have to pay it per year and on the contract prices. So it's like if you have a 3-year project, you're paying thrice. So some of these are really biting us. Those are really my major comments. I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but I really want to thank the organizers for this function. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer. And just maybe to prepare a couple of people, because we have one more, and then I'll come back to 2 people here, PPDA and Gilbert, because there were questions asked on your presentation, but also questions asked on the law itself, the Act, the PPDA Act. But I also thought Levi from PPDA would say something. So Levi, you'll have 1 minute. But before that, I want to invite Andrew Chamagero, who's representing us, because we always get the end of the stick when we report about some of these non-disclosures or non-completion of projects and all the other bad things that happen in infrastructure. We are attacked for, not doing enough of reading or probably following up on these projects. So I thought he would say something on our behalf, and then we close.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Chamagiro. I work with NTV. I'm a journalist, and I've worked with Cost. I think this will be my 4th year. And all I can say is that we've had engagements at different forums where journalists are castigated for not delivering the right information. That's one. Then two, usually sending in the wrong reporters to cover anything to do with construction. So stories come out when they are either half-baked or they are shady. Someone has to call and ask who wrote these stories. So today, I come to share plight of we, the journalists who cover. I think I'm lucky that I went through the trainings that Cost offered in the first phases, that I had to go through the trainings and understand the construction language and to understand the portals that be, and then to have the access to the people who give the right comments, not the engineers somewhere in Wandegea or the likes. Now, the first challenge we've always had as journalists, one, is to understand the projects that are running. Media houses, we have failed to get dockets that are entirely looking at construction. So you'll find a journalist who covers demonstrations or normal political shows on the streets to cover construction. Now this brings half-baked content at the end of the day, and it damages the construction industry on a whole. But the other challenge we have had, I'm grateful that Susan Kataike is here. It's something to do with information. Previously, we used to ask for information, and they would take us in circles. Sign this paper, what kind of content do you want, what format do you want it? So you go in circles, yet you had deadlines from your producers and editors to meet. Now that she's in Ministry of Transport, we are grateful that you give us timely information. Then the advancement with regards to content alignment. Many entities, contractors, and the umbrellas that unite all of them, they don't have portals where we can find this information. I want to thank KCCA. I think 2 years ago, I sampled to see if KCCA meant what they said in one of the symposiums we had at Fairway, where they said they had a portal where you can report something and they'll come in your area. Now I stay in Chiwatle, Majwala Road. We had very bad road, the drainage was bad, so I took the picture, I posted it on the portal with my number and the road and the division I was in, and I was called in less than 20 hours. And an engineer from KCCA came and explained the kind of road we have in our area and why we have it that way, and why it's never worked on. However, she went ahead to explain where we could find the funds to rectify the road. As I speak today, my road is better because of that portal. So, where I stand, if I was not a journalist who attends Cost kind of engagements and understanding how it works, possibly I wouldn't have known. The same thing happens to a colleague of mine, Ali Mivule, who stays in Lusaze. I advised him to do the same thing, and his road was worked upon. So from where we stand is basically the right person to talk to and the right content to align to the public. Then secondly, Cost has come through strongly to engage the public about the barazas. Let me take an example of the Chira Road roundabout, or the T-junction. Initially, it had no inlet and outlet of the residents in the Bukoto flats. But it was through Cost that we went back and we looked at the plans and we went on ground, and the contractor was advised to adjust. Today, when I'm coming from Kamwach, I can see those who stay in the flats can easily cross through. It was all a courtesy of Cost informing the journalists who are covering that they could actually report accurate information. The engagement of locals, it is something I want to highlight today. I was touched deeply by the Sabagabo division in Machinde, Ugandans who gave out land free of charge to have the projects run, to have a good road. Ugandans are known to either ask for too much compensation, but this time around the locals said no, we are willing to give our land, that we can have a good project run. Now, I've not seen Ugandans being this patriotic to that level, but I was very impressed, and the sad bit about it, it was never reported in media. But this changed the entire scope of how construction should be. So going forward, as media, I would suggest that Cost with the other stakeholders who are here with us, that they liaise with the newsrooms, and they get particular people to train about the industry, so that you have credible reporters covering things to a great magnitude. And the other thing is a small tool makes big waves for open contracting. If I should go in Nigeria, Bundeshi, it addresses the problem of organizing the data around individual contracts. Every contract is given a unique tracking code. So if I'm tracking Katosi Road, I know exactly how far it's working and how it's going. The system displays information about the project's budget, the award pricing, the contract, location, and all that status. So we too can come up with a Ugandan tool just to achieve this to a greater height, like the Bundeshi. So from where I stand, on behalf of all the journalists, we never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can bring the change we want as Uganda. I thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. He says he used 4 minutes. I'm not so sure. But thank you nonetheless for representing us. And I want now to invite, we are done really with the feedback on the report. We indeed had invited the chair of the Infrastructure Committee of Parliament, but as you may be aware, some of these committee chairs have been reshuffled. And we are not yet aware whether he received his or passed it on or he's still in office, but it's a conversation that continues, but they will get the feedback or the information and the report itself. May I now invite Levi, Dr. Levi Kabagambe, who is a PPDA board member. He has some comments. He may also raise some questions, Gilbert, on your report. And he can also answer the PPDA questions.
I also request to put off this. I want to thank everybody here, and particularly Cost, for inviting some of us. And I want to admit I have read this report. I have been close to it. I want to say everything in that report under the disclosure that they have even disclosed is correct. My name is Dr. Kabagambe. I'm a member of the PPDA board, and I'm the procurement specialist on the board. I have just 3 comments to make. Number 1, the 99% that everybody has commented. You know, that is the interesting thing with data. I come from the research world. It stimulates thinking. Everybody cannot believe that 99 is correct. And if you want to prove that 99 is correct, read the PPDA report. I think there are about 3 reports consistently. This is not the first time to announce 99. The ED is here. 99 has been announced not less than 3 times. Why don't you clap for yourselves? And I want to tell you that's where the problem starts from. It starts from there. They say, Ugandans, 99% of the contracts, it can't be true. I want to say it is true. Now, where is the issue? In this report, again, research depends on the terms of reference. I think next time, the TORs need to be discussed with a number of sector players. so that the data required is shared. That we want to know the following, which I don't see that it happened. If it had happened, everybody would have said, in this study, we as consultants capture the data on us. We as contractors capture the data on us. So that when it comes here, you are also in the data. Otherwise, in the rules of research, if you did not negotiate the TOR, you will not be here. They will pick what they want to pick. But next time, I think they will expand the survey to capture various data points. I think I had to emphasize that. But going by the report we have just issued, again, 99% are local farms, but with a value of 72% ED. Not true? 72% of value is aligned to 99% of numbers. That is data. I have a report, I've read it. That is the one we issued as PPDA. I just used the mathematics, and not even math, it is arithmetic. If you do 100% minus 72, it gives you 28%, which I aligned to 1% of foreign farms, right? Now, I can confidently say, going by last year's report, 1% which is foreign is aligned to 28% of value, right? And I was even trying to do some small arithmetic, that if 1% of foreign is equal to 28% of value, what is 1% of local? It gave me 0.7 of value. And that's why you should be very worried. Don't get worried of 99 blah, blah, blah. That's not serious. The real serious is 0.7% of value is equal to 28% of value from foreign. And if you want to get even much more analysis, Chamagura, I listen to you quite well on TV. Now also listen to me. Now, if you want to see how serious this matter is, I have divided 0.7 into the 28. It is 40 times. So if you want to know how much richer 1 unit of a foreign farm takes, it is 40 times you. That's where the issue is. That's where the conversation is. That they don't care coming here to do 1 road or 2. They will take 40 times your worth. But we shall take the huge numbers, isn't it? I think the conversation is there. But let me also end like this, that the government has been, I think, the first to know that this is happening. And that's why some of us say it was good COVID came. Now, when COVID came, people realized that Ugandans can do things. And if it was not COVID, who would have known we can even export sanitizers? Very good sanitizers. So, right now I'm saying this. Number 1, sector, let's sit together and always discuss our data needs. And then an instrument is developed and we gather the data that everybody will see. For me, I'm a researcher, I know if you did not take a conversation in the data collection, you will look for yourself and you can't find yourself. But I want to tell you that's a fact. And secondly, I want to say that the enemy of Ugandans is Ugandans. Better note this. I have an example. One entity I will not disclose denied a local Ugandan farm a contract because the first time they manipulated it, he reported it to PPDA. We cancelled that award. I know. But our rule, our power does not cancel and again conduct the procurement. We said it is cancelled because this was required to have been taken by a local farm according to the guidelines. Do you know what the entity did? Later, I met the contractor. He said, but you people, can I come back? I said, for what? They have now increased the threshold to deny me a complaint. From 9 point something billion, they put it to about 13. And now made sure that this 10 billion thing you have read here does not apply. When he met me, I said, you are beaten legally. Go home and sleep. Don't come back because you will lose this case. Who is the enemy of Ugandans? Lastly, the procurement qualification. The qualifications for awards, that is the PPDA, we shall deal with it. I sit on that board. We have received very many recommendations. My ED is here. We are going to deal with it. Our commissioner is there. Mr. Kiinji, why don't you stand up again? Mr. Kiinji is the commissioner, procurement policy. He's our boss at the Ministry of Finance. We are going to solve some of these problems. But I felt I should give you this kind of brief analysis so that you know where the problem is. Thank you so much.
Doctor, thank you. Thank you very much. It would have been unfair to us for you to leave without giving us that information. Myself and Chamagero, especially. And we are going to use it. So don't hesitate to accept our invitation to TV to explain these things to our people. Gilbert, I think he has done part of the work. Or do you want me to ask the ED first? I think the ED should speak because you speak to the report. ED, please come and answer the questions. Keep it short.
Thank you, Mr. Mujisha. I think I want to thank Dr. Kawagambe. He has answered most of these things. But on disclosure, the concern of Engineer Bagonza, the source is the GPP, and actually Minister of Works is on the government procurement portal. The trouble we have been having with our procurement professionals in those ministries is the failure to post all the required information. So that is where we need to touch. If all this information was posted on the government procurement portal, eventually we'll have electronic government procurement system, then Gilbert will be able to access this information because we gave them rights to access information on government procurement. So let's do that. But also that information, we made sure we worked with them actually to ensure that it is in the open contracting data standards. It can be globally used because it is in that format. The guidelines to increase resident providers 10 years, Madam Muhewa, that is still under discussion. Because there is also the other group who say resident providers are investors, are manufacturers, are contributing to this economy. Why should we edge them out of that reservation or preference to participate in public procurement? But that is under discussion. We'll agree, and Chiinji will agree with me. This is what we are also putting as proposals in the regulations. So if that is accepted by government, then it will apply. For us, we'll be there to enforce. The monitoring of the reservation guidelines, it is in force. Dr. Kawagambe should have talked about it also because we have established a unit at PPDA to monitor implementation and enforcement of the reservation schemes. And this mainly, it will start from the procurement planning. What do you have for locals in the procurement plan? Why are you putting this in a lump sum? Can't you unbundle this procurement so that it can fall within the threshold, or we can, instead of asking those high requirements, if it is unbundled, then the requirements can be also reduced. I think that the subcontracting policy, I hope the 30% that Engineer Bet talked about is on subcontracting. You know, this law doesn't actually prohibit the local consultants or local contractors from participating from any public procurement. It actually promotes competition. The trouble that we have with our local contractors is your competitive nature, your competitiveness to win this contract. So that is where we need to build the local capacity so that you are able to compete on a fair ground, to submit responsive bids, and then you win these contracts. If you are very competitive, we wouldn't see these foreigners coming here to do these contracts. And the law doesn't say, no, this is for international, don't participate. No, it says participate, but at times you fail to meet these requirements. I thank you.
Thank you very much all for the interventions, and thank you, Mr. Tsoramio, for answering the question of where to disclose. The government procurement portal is the place to disclose, and we recommend that all data points should be disclosed. The current practice is that mainly planning data is disclosed, but when it goes tendering, award, and execution, as I showed in the presentation, that is an area of progress where we would request stakeholders to engage so that we have full disclosure, which, when you turn it, full access to information for citizens and other stakeholders who need this data and information. Now, on this recommendation there was an action on the 3 local governments. So the question was, why these 3? The reason is that of the 18 procuring entities which we analyzed,
That's not the question.
what's the question?
There is full district local, there is full municipality. So which of those I mean? Yes.
Oh, I mentioned them in the presentation.
You just mentioned full.
Masili and, okay. So the reason for those 3 is because that whereas other local governments had disclosed something, these ones did not disclose anything. So that's why the recommendation was that let's engage them and see what are the challenges, and then we see how to.
Are they municipalities or
Oh, these are, I think districts. Sorry, I need to check that again. Districts. Okay, these are districts, local governments. Thank you for that, Dr. Kabagambe. Now, on foreign versus local, thank you very much for the recommendation. We are going in future to engage stakeholders on the indicators to assess so that we capture feedback for the interests of various stakeholders. But what I have flashed is the national situation. The other one was based on the 18 entities. But for the national situation, when you pick, we have a tool or dashboard which picks data from the GPP and you put the various indicators that you need. So this one shows that it is local versus foreign companies. And for the 3 years that we tracked, that we have selected, the few foreign companies took contracts valued at over 1 trillion as compared to 49 trillion, which was taken by local. 49 billion. Now, of course, there's a challenge that some of the agencies don't disclose fully. But on the basis of what is disclosed, this is the situation. A lot of money, a lot of opportunities, a lot of jobs are taken away. And I agree with Dr. Kabagambe that I think it is in national interest to discuss this figure here in favor of local companies. Thank you so much.
Yes, and it's interesting because Levi, when you were going to speak, I walked to Gilbert because we still have, as journalists, we like the detail, and I kept saying, what's the detail in the 99? Now you helped us define the 99. by explaining that 99 divide by the numbers of the contractors would actually bring you to the 0.7. Now the 0.7 is actually reflected here. And he had just put up the presentation. It was interesting that the 1% takes 1 trillion and the 99 takes 49 billion. It was, and this exactly is the 4. This is 4.7 of. This is 4.7%. Imagine of the contract jobs. This is unbelievable. So anyway, we have some homework, all of us, to go and munch on. I actually want to go and sit on this report because I really want to. I will release like 10 tweets just in on the subject because people need to understand this. We're talking about promoting fair business. I think that's why we're here. Okay. So that said, a couple of administrative announcements, and I'll then ask that when the recording has stopped, I can then announce they're administrative, but they are non-core for the conversation on television. So 2 things. If you need to share any other feedback, and you may have some feedback or you could pick something from the report, the email is info@cost.or.ug. Or is it also in the booklet? It should be there. But if you have any feedback you want to share with the team, info@cost.or.ug. Or you could reach Olive on 0777 290 621. 0777 290 621. And then you should share your feedback. However, ED, PPD, I think there's something also that we thought you'd, as a takeaway, which was mentioned by the engineer-in-chief, on the conversation around disclosure. And he asked, where do we go? Where? And there were key questions. There were 3. Where, when, and in what form do we disclose this information? And so, and I think Oliver was telling me, PPDA, it's part of the conversation you're having on, do you then provide a platform, a portal, where people can go and provide this information? Oh, okay, perfect. I could have. All right. So, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, the team. I saw Susan Kataike here from the ministry. We want to appreciate the team for being fully represented from the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Ethics, my ministry, ICT and National Guidance. I see it's a full house. So we want to thank all of you for coming, the consultants, the contractors, our members of the media. The only representation missing here was Parliament, but this information will reach them. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. Please don't hesitate to reach Cost on any other feedback you want to share. Other than that, good evening and thank you, everyone.